Hello and welcome to UC Today. My name is Kieran, and for this session I am delighted to be joined by Joe Keane, Product Manager at Continuant. Today we are discussing the roadmap for a successful cloud migration. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely, Kieran.
But before we dive into what exactly a successful cloud migration looks like, can you please tell us about yourself, Joe, and the work you do with Continuant?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I come to the UC space, Unified Communication space, from a 15-year history focused very largely on the Microsoft UC solution stack. Prior to that, I spent some time with Avaya Telephony and products there. I've always been very fortunate to be on the front end of SIP technologies. So watching that develop over the last decade or so has been very beneficial to where I am today. Today, I manage Continuant Connect, which is our calling platform as a service offering, right? And I suspect we'll spend a little time talking about that somewhat as we move along here.
Perfect. And diving into maybe a bit more of a broader aspect to the conversation, but there are obviously a lot of challenges facing businesses as they plan to migrate to the cloud. Can you please outline some of those for our listeners, please?
Sure. I mean, one is the biggest thing is really it's a change in a mentality, right? It's a big paradigm shift from where we've been in the last 20 years and really the last century or so with telephony, where we're very used to having a hard delivery of services, right? Development of network over the last 30 years has been huge. And the way that we actually focus on business continuity strategies has changed greatly. Right. So we are still in the middle of that transition. We see a lot of organizations that really kind of struggle with what that means and the way that they need to start moving things forward. The other shift really is the concern about security, right? What does it look like if I take the things that I've traditionally had in-house that I could manage or have some sense of security about because I knew where things were, right? That's changed. So really, those two components are probably the biggest conversation pieces that we have when we get into what does it mean to actually move to the cloud. Some of the other things that come along with that are really secondary, right? When we talk about moving platforms, traditionally we had desk phones. Let's say you're moving from a desk phone to a UCaaS solution, right? Obviously, there are adoption concerns, but that's nothing really terribly new to the business environment. What is new, though, is really just the shift in seeing that delivered largely as a service and not so much as something that we bring in-house and manage ourselves.
Perfect. And you alluded to there the as a service part, and naturally a big one of the factors been us discussing today is Continuing Connect and its relevance as a CPaaS service. How would you go about defining CPaaS yourself, and how can it generally help businesses in their migration to the cloud?
Sure. So for Continuant Connect, we really focus on CPaaS really being that voice first migration to cloud services, right? What we're really looking to do is give organizations choice and flexibility in the way that they want to move forward and really start to adopt those cloud solutions. So one of the things that we do is focus on that unification of that voice, right? Particularly as it applies to PSTN, right? So the traditional model of focusing on PSTN is really going away as well. So along with this shift in dynamic of having to move from like an on-premises based solution to a cloud-based solution, we're also looking at a transition in the way that we communicate, right? We've all seen it really develop in the last 5 years, of course, right? But what organizations are looking for is that flexibility to get there, right? And some of the things that we do is bring an organization along in either various hybrid or even legacy support models so that we can, leverage existing investments and what they have on premises, start to get them comfortable with what the cloud solution looks like, what the reliability of that really is, and how that works for their organization. And then start to work on migrating away from that legacy or on-premises telephony system, right? A couple of things come with that within an organization. A lot of times there's some focus on network, really with regards to redundancy and reliability. But getting comfortable with the idea that the focus for an organization really needs to be on that network delivery, right? We see more and more services going to network. We see a lot less consumption of voice-only interactions, right? Very, very largely, of course, we see adoption of chat. But then as you get into meetings or you get into these kind of conversations, right, it's a lot more video than it ever really was in the past, right? And especially when you're bringing in new generations of workers, that's how they operate, right? So that moving into a CPaaS solution really has a lot of focus on, okay, we have PSTN, we have that voice only solution, we have multiple integration points, across various UCaaS, CCaaS solutions. But then our focus is really to tie those things together to make that as easy as possible for your organization to move from where you are today into that cloud solution that you're really looking for, but to do that on your timeline in a way that you are comfortable with.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that ties in nicely to my next question. You allude to the fact that a modern organization has all these disparate platforms and applications that are really important to try and migrate effectively to the cloud. How would CPaaS help streamline an organization's different platforms while optimizing its workforce at the same time?
Sure. So that's a big question. So there are a lot of components in play there, right? So, the biggest thing a lot of organizations are looking for once they actually, focus on a cloud destination is really what service they want in the long term. And there's a reality where we know that that's going to change, right? If you think in terms of Teams and Zoom and Webex and all the services that are out there today. Again, we are in a position of offering choice to customers so that when they're coming on board, maybe they haven't fully realized what those decisions look like yet, right? Or what the direction needs to look like. But going back to flexibility and choice, that's what we're about offering, right? The other component that's really heavy there is adoption and change management controls. So, Continuant has a really strong ACM team, and we wrap those services around our onboarding. So when we are actually bringing companies on, and we're working towards whether it's a Teams or a Zoom or a Webex or Genesis or Ring, anything that really we want to plug in, that we put that flexibility in place. We give that company choice over which way they want to go, but then we wrap that adoption control around all of it, right? So that somebody with experience in making that transition is really helping your organization benefit its workers, right? So when you're making a change, that's difficult. We've recognized that in the past. Everybody's familiar with it. I was alluding to earlier, that's not new. But what is new, of course, is the technology. So having somebody that's got that experience to bring those things forward, to leverage the benefits of the new technologies, and to identify where there are gaps from, where you were yesterday to what you need to do today and how you need to do it. So there are a lot of things that you can do in really any platform in taking advantage of the change in technology to benefit your workforce. But you just have to have the experience to be able to do that. And that's where Continuant brings in our ACM to help facilitate that.
Perfect. And you mentioned all the different ways it supports voice solutions, how Continuant Connect supports voice solutions. Can you explain a bit more detail, please, about how, for example, Microsoft Teams calling, how does Continuant Connect go about supporting specific solutions like that one?
Sure. So, Continuant as a whole has been a Microsoft partner since 2007. The organization is a managed services provider and has been for I think we're at 28 plus years now, right? Always with a focus on telephony and unified communications. So our experience and expertise lies very heavily there. One of the things that actually drove my interest in Continuant before coming here were really two things. One is the ACM team that I mentioned before, really second to none. And I mean that. In that space, there is not another organization, I think, that has something comparable. And then the day two side is stellar, right? It is very well organized. We have 24/7, follow the sun. Um, we have a headquarters knock that's always on board, but we also have resources globally that's responsible for interacting right with customers that we support on a global scale. So we have, a really robust set of well-developed teams that actually support these platforms as we're moving forward, really from day one, right out of the box. We're off and running and trying to get onboarding customers up to speed.
Perfect. And naturally, one of the biggest challenges in moving to the cloud, sorry, is about the security and privacy of data, and really preserving the safety of business data, but also the safety of its workforce. How might CPaaS help a business in the safety of its workforce and the security of its liabilities?
So I'll probably toe the line a little bit here when I'm talking about safety of workforce, right? I have a tendency to think in terms of emergency services and how we ensure that, um, customers are meeting the regulations that are laid out by their governing bodies, right? Here in the U.S. and North America, obviously we have E911 requirements, right? That we have to meet. Again, that kind of goes back to the expertise in that field and being able to really take a customer through that. The reality is that is very largely an educational conversation, right? So every time we come into an organization and we start talking about E911 or emergency calling in other countries, it has a tendency to be a very confusing subject, right? Some of that due to regulations and various things, and maybe poorly written legislation, right? Things that you have to interpret, but there's just a reality where the technology is trying to meet a certain set of requirements, right? We are dealing with safety. So we spend a lot of time educating customers, defining what their strategies need to be, and then putting the configuration in place, not just initially, but making changes to the day-to-day operations, right? When we know that that's going to impact, changes to your daily operations and changes to your environment are going to impact that. From a security perspective, right? There's a lot of compliance stuff to meet, right? And Continuant Connect meets a lot of them. So one of the things that we talk about is, the platform currently delivers voice services for some of Microsoft's departments, right? So really, when we're talking in terms of what does security look like, I don't know that there's anybody that's maybe more stringent in the way that services are delivered than Microsoft. Just anecdotally, I'd point out that all of those requirements have been met and the voice is being delivered that way, right? But then past that, right, we have things on platform that we have to be attentive to, GDPR, that kind of stuff. Compliant with that, we focus very much on current and future ISO certifications, right? We see that changing very drastically, especially with development of cloud services and the way that organizations want to approach that, and of course the standards around it. So it's ever evolving because you're talking about security, but we really are focused on moving the liability for that security aspect from the customer into really our environment or that platform, and just to remove that concern from your organization.
Perfect. And one final question before I let you go, Joe. An important factor for businesses in their cloud future is safeguarding for that future. How might solutions like Continuant Connect, specifically help in this context?
So yeah, one thing to keep in mind with Continuant Connect, it's in a state of continual development, right? So we are always adding more services. We do have extensible APIs that are plugged in. So if there is an immediate need, we work very closely to develop that with the customer so that we talk about being voice first, right? But we're still about choice and flexibility. And we're still really focused on being that centralized hub for your communication and collaboration needs. So that is a really big component, right? Just being able to leverage the applications that you as an organization want to be able to leverage. The other things that we do for is look really far forward down the road as to what worker trends seem to look like, right? And largely generational. So I alluded to it earlier, right? We have new generations of workers that don't like dial phone numbers. That's just the reality, right? They don't now. They never have. They never will. The story that I've been using recently on it is I was on a road trip this summer, and my 13-year-old asked from the back seat why there are phone numbers on billboards, with all earnest curiosity, right? And there's just I was like, well, that's just how we do it, right? But that's going away. So all of that is changing. So you see this shift towards more of an omni-channel approach to the way communications are initiated, right? And then the other thing that you just can't ignore, right, is AI. Right? If we got through this entire interview and I didn't say AI, like there's going to be somebody in trouble. So, but looking at what how that's developing, the pace at which it's developing, the way that various organizations are using it, not just in like as a bolt onto their platform, right? But the way that we can leverage it as far as starting to make some of those connections and make them a lot more versatile, right? And flexible, right? So all of those things kind of culminate in making sure that we are developing a platform that is viable down the road, maintains again that flexibility and choice as far as what your organization needs to achieve, and then continue to offer that flexibility and choice as trends change, as your organization grows and develops, right? So all of those are really intrinsic to the way that we put this together, because we want to keep our customers happy, and we want to do so for a very long time.
Perfect. I think it's a lovely way to end. And you're right, like it was perilously close to having a full interview without mentioning AI, the buzzword of 2023, but we got there in the end.
It almost happened.
I think that's all we've got time to today, but I've really enjoyed this session. So thank you to Joel for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. I appreciate it.
And if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share on social media, and we'll see you next time. I've been Kieran Devlin of UC Today. Thanks for watching.